Oh yes, those macho men, the alpha males. Hey, just what do you think it means when we say, oh, he's the alpha? I'm talking in the koala sense, of course. Well, in today's video, I'm going to take a deep dive into this fascinating subject with the help of my Discord members who asked lots of great questions. I've spent quite a long time actually putting this video together, between getting questions on my Discord server and then doing some research, thinking about what I've seen, going through the last 10 years of video, looking for examples to use, etc. And I've ended up writing a pretty big deep dive essay. So I've decided that I'm going to split this alpha male video into 2 parts. Maybe it will end up being in 3 parts. This is part 1. I hope that you really enjoy what I've come up with as a way of explaining and answering your great questions. I'm Katrina, and I love talking koalas, so make sure that you like this video, that you've subscribed to my channel, and get yourself ready for a fascinating look at our boys. I would like to acknowledge the Widjabul people of the Bundjalung Nation on whose land Koala Gardens sits. It's very important to me to always bring everything back to our original custodians, the First Nations people. Just what do we mean by an alpha male koala? Are you confused about just how koalas live together while not living together? And what about all this talk of alpha males and colonies and home ranges? Oh, there's so many things that you hear mentioned when you see or read something about koalas. Well, in today's video, I'm going to walk you through the amazing secret world of koala society, explain koala social behaviour and koala colonies. Koalas are solitary animals, yet they live in colonies, but this doesn't mean they socialise together in those colonies the way we think about other animals. Each koala moves about in an area of their own, and we call this area a home range. Home ranges of different individual koalas overlap each other. I'm going to divide the koalas in any particular colony into a few types to try and give a clear explanation of how the colonies work. Now, while this is not exhaustive, the structure of any given colony changes from year to year as young are born, disperse out, disperse in, and those who do stay around keep maturing on. So for the purposes of this, we'll talk about alpha males, breeding females, low-ranking males, juvenile males, and juvenile females. I think that's the simplest and most concise way to take you through all of this. Koala structures are based around these members, and while there are rankings within these categories, they're too complex to discuss easily, and they're not really all that relevant to us in this discussion. For example, those breeding females may or may not have a joey in pouch or a joey on back. Another example of what I mean is that while one low-ranking male may be a little bigger and stronger or a year older than another, they simply don't interact enough for this to be of more importance than to have an influence on who settled into which particular part of a home range when they founded it or as things have changed. There's some great ways that you can get involved in what I'm doing here, because all of my video on YouTube will always be free, and it's very important to me that I donate a lot of my time and energy to bring this koala information to you. But you might like a little bit more and a little bit more personal. And if you would, there's a couple of great ways that you can support me and get exclusive content and merchandise. One of the ways is to become a patron, and there's links below. Another is to do an In the Loop adoption and receive exclusive information by email. Check out all of my links and see what might work for you. Liking this video is also really important because it definitely helps the YouTube algorithms. In order to try and make sense of the little bit I've already just said about how a colony structure fits together and the different types of animals that are within this structure, I want to use this little animation that I've created to try and give a reasonable representation to you of any particular koala colony. Now for this one, just to help it try and make a little bit of sense, I put Koala Gardens at the heart of the colony area simply for illustration. And one of the reasons I've done that is because you can see that the alpha male in this case covers a much larger area than just this one property. It's not meant to be a to scale image. It is purely a representative image for us to use for the discussion. Alpha males may have huge variations in the size of their particular home ranges because it's going to depend on a number of factors, such as how many koalas there are in the area, how many food trees, particularly mature ones, there are in the area. And some alpha males can have a home range as small as a hectare or two, while another could travel around a 40 square kilometre area, even more if there are very sparse food sources. In actual fact, here at Koala Gardens, there have been times during some years where I have actually had 2 alpha males using the property, but they have used different parts of the property. So the overlapping from one alpha male to the next, that has happened to occur inside the property. So there's lots of differences, and I think another thing I'm trying to kind of get across is that these colony areas change year to year depending on the situations that happen. Now, they don't tend to change a huge lot this year and next year and the year after, but when I look back over nearly 10 years of collecting data, I can see that so far as alpha males using the property, there have been a few changes during that time. Now let's really get in and start to have a look at this representation that I've made for you and get the animations flowing. A koala colony is considered to be the collection of koalas that use an area of habitat that is the home range for an alpha male. So you can see in this representation, the alpha male's area is much larger than my property, Koala Gardens. And then this first breeding female, she overlaps his area, but she also overlaps into an area that is probably used by another alpha male. But because most of her area is inside this male's area, she's considered a colony member. It's pretty easy with that juvenile female because she's completely inside his area. And as these build up, I'm sure that you're starting to get the picture. There are a lot of koalas that are using this same area of habitat, and they all are using different amounts of area themselves depending on their status and also their age. The juveniles are using a lot less area than the big breeding females, but that low-ranking male, as it happens, might be using a little bit less than a juvenile who's ready to disperse out. Remember, this is really just a representative image showing that there can be lots of koalas using the area. Those of you who are my patrons and in the loop adopters, you actually get to see who the different koalas are and how they're moving within the property each month. And so this little representation probably makes even more sense to you because you've been kind of used to seeing how the different koalas tend to use a particular area. We've got that mix of different gendered animals and also the different age groups. And finally, that grey one down the bottom corner that I've called an outside male, his home range only just touches the alpha male, so he probably really belongs to another completely different colony. I hope that helped. Replay that as many times as you need in order to really get your head around that representation of one alpha male covers a big area and then other koalas using different amounts of smaller areas are all interacting or overlapping within there, but they're not necessarily actually getting together and interacting with each other. So that means that while koalas may always be found in a particular area, that colony map will also change over the years because those koalas are maturing and moving out, other ones coming in, etc. Some ecologists actually talk about colonies in a broader sense, using larger areas of habitat as a definition for that. And for example, I often will talk about the importance of the tuckarimba koalas, and I don't mean the ones who use my property when I say that. I'm encompassing far more area than my property and even a little bit more than just tuckarimba. I'm often thinking of even surrounding areas to tuckarimba because all of the animals that are in these areas, they all disperse in and out of my land. And so I kind of see them as being, in the big picture, a part of the bigger colony. So this means that sometimes colony and maybe population is another word that could be used. They can sometimes be used a little bit interchangeably. We also sometimes go even bigger and talk about even larger areas, such as saying things like the northern koalas or the Queensland koalas or the southern koalas. So it's no wonder that you could get confused when you are getting information from different people who might be using some of these terms in slightly different ways. So the colony picture that we just saw on the screen is a really basic colony that are the koalas using the home range of any one alpha male. Let's just replay that little colony diagram animation and we'll just quickly think through it again because you might see more of it better this second time around. So we've got the basic colony, which is the koalas who are interacting within the home range of the alpha male. We can see that many other koalas overlap inside and outside his range, and these first two breeding females have probably never really actually seen each other. They would likely know of each other's smell, and they may know at least one other alpha male quite separately to each other. Then we get the little juvenile female, the juvenile male, and they would know of each other, and they would know of at least one of the breeding females each. So this means that the alpha male has the opportunity to mate with all of these females, and while some of them will see each other, some of them will hear each other, lots of them will smell each other regularly, they don't really have any contact with each other. Now, of course, koala home ranges are not actually shaped like ovals. That's just the representation. But you can see that there's also this low-ranking male who is living right in the middle of the property. And so what you can see is that he would possibly have opportunities to breed with those three females if it's the breeding season and the alpha male is not around. That alpha male has to cover a really large area. You can see that the juveniles move in smaller areas for their home range than the adults. While we don't really try to distinguish between the ranking of the males in the colony apart from the alpha male, one of the things that can come into consideration is that one of those young juveniles that are there in the colony could develop into an alpha, and so he may expand his home range faster or at a younger age and end up having more altercations with other males in the area, not necessarily just altercations with the alpha male of the property. Gets tricky, doesn't it? But I hope that was helpful in giving us a good starting point for the deep dive discussion that we're having today. I want to give a huge shout out of thanks to the members of my Discord for helping me put together the things that people most want to know about alpha male koalas. I'd encourage you to come and join the Discord. It's a fantastic way to interact with other people who love koalas because there is no advertising and there's lots of structured ways to get into discussions just on the things you're interested in discussing with other people who love koalas too. Now, back to our topic. We know what it means to have a colony of koalas now. We know how loose a term that is when you consider that the koalas who live in any colony may never actually see each other, and those that do will probably never come into actual physical contact with each other. This means that trying to understand the social structure of a koala colony is difficult because it operates on a level that has very few parallels to what we humans think of as a social structure. We really need to try not to anthropomorphize the terms that I'm going to use during this video, because koalas really do operate on a different level to humans. So, are you ready for the questions so that gives me some structure to move through this video with? Let's start with this great question. What does alpha mean in the koala world? Is the alpha an alpha for life? Does a male develop or become alpha, and is alpha purely genetics, or is there a mix of nature versus nurture or environment? If so, can a koala start life small and not an alpha, and then later put on weight, learn some skills, and become the alpha? Okay, that's not just one question. That is a combination of questions that we're all asking the same kind of thing. Because once we understand what the term alpha means, that's going to help us to work through all of those connecting questions. Well, what is an alpha male then? Alpha is the first letter in the Greek alphabet. I'm sure most of you knew that. And it's the equivalent of the English letter A. When it's used as an adjective, which means when it's placed before a noun, such as koala, it describes an individual who is strong, powerful, and in charge of others. Now, this is where we then need to carefully study koalas as opposed to other animals or humans, because not all alpha male mammals behave the same way. Did you know that? And not all social mammal communities even have alpha males. Did you know that one? Alpha male koalas are definitely bigger and stronger than most of the other males around them. They are not, however, in charge of those males the way an alpha male of highly social species might be. For example, alpha male chimpanzees display a lot of grooming behaviour, they're physically exhibitionistic, and there's lots of dominance displays that happen. The alpha male koala is very different to this because they are still a solitary animal. They should not appear to be more aggressive than the other males, although appearances can deceive. They often look more aggressive to us as humans because an older alpha male, and even an older male who's not an alpha, may have lots of scars, particularly on the face and ears. Now, interestingly, these battle scars are just as likely to have been caused by females when they're attempting to mate with them, as they are likely to be caused by males that they're having a fight with. The scars are not an indication that the male is meaner or more aggressive than other males. Not at all. However, the alpha male will have a very large scent gland, and the older he gets, the more evident it is that he is constantly rubbing it on the tree trunks. That scent gland will become very flattened, and all of the rubbing pushes the oil out through their beautiful white chest. The koala alpha is characterized by being very calm and confident with that large scent gland. Now, of course, if this male is provoked, the fact that they are larger, strong, and confident means that they are a fierce opponent. If they are challenged by another male coming and entering their territory, they will become exhibitionistic and they will give dominance displays, and that can include extra bellowing. What I am saying, though, is that you don't see alpha males just being exhibitionists who are going around all the time doing these behaviours, but they will do those behaviours in response to certain situations. The alpha male koala lives in a much larger home range, and this means that he must move further on a daily basis. So it's rare to see him in the same tree 2 days in a row, unless there is a female that he's intent on mating in that tree. He may sleep a little less than the other males, and he will no doubtedly eat a lot more. Why does he eat more? Because if he's sleeping a little less and he's moving over much larger areas, he's using a lot more calories up, and so he's going to have to take a lot more calories in. The alpha male has two similar but very slightly different meanings. And notice I didn't say alpha male koala, I said alpha male. So alpha male is actually what we would call a character trait in humans. This means that one male koala simply will never become an alpha no matter what happens, because alpha male is really a character trait. So even if there is no alpha in an area inhabited by other females and males, a low-ranking male won't simply rise to the challenge and become the alpha. He will probably get lots more opportunities to try and breed the females, and as a result of that, the lower ranking males may be moving about more and may expand their territories a little bit in response to not having an alpha there. But that's a very different thing to the low ranking male becoming the alpha to take the alpha's place. The other meaning of alpha male is the one who is currently the alpha of an established colony. Okay, so we've got alpha male is a character trait that we might look for in koalas. And then when we're looking at any one area and we look for a colony area, the alpha male is the one who's established there. So let's just take an example to try and make even better sense of this. We'll use an example where there is a young 3-year-old male koala who is an alpha character type. He's beginning to develop a strong scent gland, and he's already starting to take potential breeding opportunities, whether he's actually successful or not. He disperses and he looks for a new area that either does not have a strong alpha already, or maybe one with an aging alpha that he might be able to take an opportunity to challenge. Even if he loses the challenge with the first adult male he tries it with, that doesn't mean he isn't an alpha. It simply means he didn't win that particular challenge and take over to become alpha of that particular area. So some alpha males can actually spend years wandering nomadically through the landscape if they are unable to find a home range where they can settle. They become the ultimate opportunists, and they can provide fantastic genetic diversity to colonies. Another good example of what might happen with an alpha male is the male that has been established as an alpha for years in his home range, and he might begin to find his daily activities a little harder as he ages, or he may become injured or fall prey to a disease. Even if he recovers from the injury or from a disease, he may not still be as strong as he was previously. The breeding season comes around and the dispersion season coincides with the breeding season, and there's a good reason for this. That is to increase genetic diversity. At the same time as the females are becoming receptive to mating, the males are all stirring from the winter. They don't actually hibernate, but they certainly do, have a bit of time off, and the testosterone levels begin to rise in the males. This means the males begin to move through the landscape, dispersing and taking all the opportunities they can during that process. This also means that an older alpha male is going to encounter more younger males than they were during the winter, and those younger males are going to be keen to have an opportunity to mate, even if they are not young alpha males looking for territory. Let me just say again, every male koala is an opportunist and will attempt to mate with females. That's why the alpha male works so hard, because every male that comes into his area would like to mate in, and I'm putting quotes around this, his girls. Because these younger males are moving through and looking for opportunities, he is more likely to get injured by getting into an altercation with some of these males, just like he could get into an altercation with an up-and-coming young alpha male. So if he is defeated by a younger male who takes over his range, he is going to have to find new strategies for how he lives. However, it's not always as simple as throwing the old alpha out of the area altogether and just taking all his stuff. The older male, who was the alpha, may actually stay around, and the new alpha may only take part of his territory, so that alpha male's territory might actually, shrink and become less. As a result of that, he might begin to expand his territory further in a different direction that new male is not using, or he may just take on, and accept like taking on a smaller territory because he's getting older anyway. So both these males are alpha males, but one is now maybe semi-retired and only move in a smaller area, and maybe he doesn't really have that much longer left in him anyway. It doesn't mean that he is no longer an alpha male. It simply means he is an alpha male now with less territory. So this is what I would call the only real mix that we see of nature versus nurture, which is one of the questions that we started this section with. One alpha male may live a longer life with a large home range and a strong colony due to nurturing an environment. Maybe he's got great soil, beautiful trees, great food sources, not a lot of human interaction. There's not many dogs around, no big roads. And so he might do really well for a long time because of those environmental influences on his life. Another one may be living in a less optimal area or suffer an injury, even fairly young, and only being in a strong position for a much shorter period of his life. Another thing that can happen is if that alpha male is overthrown when he's a little bit younger, he may end up becoming one of these nomadic alphas wandering through the area looking for opportunities. So our questions there were, what does alpha mean? And is the alpha an alpha for life? So yes, he's an alpha for life, but not necessarily an alpha that has a thriving home range with lots of other koalas in it. He doesn't become an alpha later on because he learns some skill or just gets bigger. And it really is genetics, but the nature of the environment or the nurturing that he receives because of his environment can play a really big part on how successful he is as an alpha during his lifetime. Well, that actually is going to take us to the end of part 1. There's a lot more questions around alphas and a lot more to discuss about koala colonies and how alphas work, but I'm going to try and keep it in manageable chunks that you can hopefully watch. This next one will also come out as a premiere, so keep an eye out for that, and hopefully it'll be within your time zone. To give a quick recap, koalas are solitary animals who do live in colonies but don't actually socialise together. A colony is really the koalas who live in the area or home range that belongs to a particular alpha male, and we used a diagrammatic view of a colony map to have a look at how that all works together. Within that colony there will be an alpha male, a varying amount of low-ranking males, adult females, juvenile males, juvenile females. We learned that the colony structures change every year as new young are born, as young mature, adults mature and become aged, young disperse out, others disperse in, and all of this impacts on how that colony structure works and whether an alpha male is contested or not. We talked about what the actual words alpha means, how that equates to koalas and koala behaviour, as well as a little bit about how it equates to other mammals. In part 2 of this alpha male deep dive documentary I'm doing, we're going to look at questions such as males fighting to establish who is going to be alpha, why alpha males look different to lower ranking males, whether or not it's more difficult for other males to mate, or can other males mate if they're not the alpha, and why females might be attracted to particular males. We look at whether there are actually alpha females and whether alphas stay in one home range all their lives or whether they move around. Finally, the last question we'll get to look at regards beta males and whether that is actually a thing or not. So I hope that you have enjoyed this part 1 and are looking forward to part 2. I can't wait to bring it to you. And guess what? You've made it to the end of another Koala Gardens video. So I would love it if you just double check that you have smashed that like button, and fix it if you haven't, and take a moment to write into the comments below, wow, I know a little bit about alphas now. Thanks for watching. Lots more great video coming your way soon. Another way you can support Koala Gardens is if you're looking for any kind of a gift for a friend, for some occasion, if you're looking for a new t-shirt or a hoodie or some coasters, a new phone case, just anything that you're looking for, just stop for a moment and think, hey, I wonder if Katrina has got that up on her Redbubble shop. Pop over, use the link below, have a look. Lots of great designs on over 60 different items of merchandise, all sustainably printed and posted out directly to you, and it helps me help koalas.